Ireland is famous for its scenic coastlines, towns, and villages. Peaceful and serene wide expanses of lush green fields. Sheep grazing on clover-covered pastures. Abandoned stone castles. But among the beauty, peace, and quiet of the Irish countryside roams a siren spirit that's cries can rupture eardrums. She hovers just above the ground, gliding over Ireland's bogs to warn the next Irish family of death to come. The Banshee. My name is Kayla, this is Xenu, and we are Cauldron Combos, baby. How are you? We're in green. Pinch me. Pinch you. Actually, your mask is green. Ow! No, I'm wearing green.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
This week we wanted to do an Irish folklore mythology podcast because St. Patrick's Day is approaching on the 17th, but instead of doing something basic like leprechauns, we wanted to do something, another Irish legend or mythological creature and even more paranormal than a basic leprechaun, unless there's like demonic leprechauns. I feel like that's a thing. Is that a thing?
Stealing your soul and your gold.
And your mom. Oh. But before we get started, I just wanted to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to this channel because we post podcasts every week, once a week on the spine-chilling, paranormal, and true crime topics. And I also post a little shorter 10-minute content on Cauldron Capsules where, I talk about weird, dark things alone.
Just your average, everyday murder mystery.
Yeah. Just something really relaxing before you go to bed.
A very relaxing murder mystery.
Our goal is to always educate, entertain, and try to make you laugh. So if you are into that and any of that is happening in this podcast, then make sure to hit subscribe. It really helps us a lot. Thank you. In Irish mythology, a banshee, from the Irish Banshees, meaning woman of the fairy mound or fairy woman, is a female spirit or fairy who is said to foretell the death of a family member by wailing or shrieking. What an interesting way to warn people of death. No, not like, hey, I know this is might be a little bit upsetting to hear. No, it's just like, ah! The shrieking is so piercing, it is said to even shatter glass. And the name, meaning woman of the fairy mound, is connected to the various mounds of earth dotted around the Irish countryside known as tumuli. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
You actually do?
Yeah, it's a fairy mound.
I guess. Traditionally covered a grave or a number of graves and were said to be home of spirits of the dead. Now, the banshee is sometimes depicted as an old woman with long gray hair dressed in a flowing white gown, but the banshee could also appear in other forms, such as a young maiden, beautiful, often allure people toward her with sweet singing, similar to that of mermaids and their siren songs, full-figured matron, or an old wretched crone. She appears to be dressed in either a white cloak, gray cloak, and her eyes are always seen as permanently red, bloodshot due to her constant weeping.
Jeez.
She needs some eye cream.
Or she's stoned.
Girly, banshee girl, gua sha to depuff the eyes, or ice roller.
Oh, yeah, true.
Also, she kind of reminds me of Moaning Myrtle. Like, she's always just, wailing.
Yeah, but Moaning Myrtle's wailing because she was bullied.
True.
This is like a good wail. The banshees are widely seen as good spirits, believe it or not.
While other fairies may be mischievous or helpful, banshees are said to be more solemn and associated with tragic events, obviously. Sometimes the banshee assumes the form of a virgin of the family who died young and has been given the mission by the invisible powers to become the harbinger of coming doom to her mortal kindred. That's dark and disgusting. But anyway, let's go into the origin of the banshee. As you can see, there are multiple different, stories of her. She's always wearing different things. Sometimes she's pretty. Sometimes she's a crone. Sometimes she's a hag. Sometimes she's depicted as being evil. Sometimes she's just depicted as being innocent and helpful. So let's get into the origin to determine what's going on here. So in the Irish tradition, the banshee is believed to be a remnant of the reign of the Tuatha De Danann, the gods of Ireland who were defeated and driven underground by the invading Milesians, who represented the arrival of Celtic culture in Ireland.
Not the Malaysians from Malaysia.
Yeah, I don't know why I said Milesian. I don't know.
They're the Malaysians.
Each member of the Tuatha De Danann subsequently went on to occupy a mound or hill known as a sidhe. So the once gods became known as the Eosi, meaning people of the hills, and were relegated to fairy status. Now, Irish poet W.B. Yeats once wrote,
Yeet.
Yeats! Yeet! Oh! The pagan gods of Ireland, the Tuath de Danann, robbed of worship and offerings, grew smaller and smaller in the popular imagination until they turned into the fairies. At the same time, it's impossible to deny the characterization of the Banshees as a ghost or a spirit, an ethereal, wispy, semi-transparent female phantom. The Banshee legend reaches as far back as 1380 to the publication of the Cathraim Thordelbeig, which is Triumphs of Turlough. Additionally, Norman literature of the time also mentions banshees. Banshees have been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's like an OG mythology. Ever since people have been in Ireland, there have been banshees.
Yeah. And so there's also a legend of the Yue Brian Banshee, who is thought to be named Abel, and the ruler of 25 other banshees who would always be at her attendance. This story could be the reason for the idea that the wailing of numerous banshees signifies the death of a great person. So if like there's more than one in different pitches, then it's like, wow.
I wonder if they're harmonizing.
That person's a good person.
Like pentatonics.
In some versions of the legend, banshees are also said to be able to predict the future. Obviously, if they can predict death, that probably translates to other things in life. They may appear to a family member in a dream, showing them images of the future or warning them of impending danger.
Imagine if the banshees could predict like stock, and you go in the woods and you hear, "Buy Apple calls."
Don't buy Dogecoin.
Sell your Tesla puts.
Or any cryptocurrency. Author D.R. McAnally Jr.'s book, Irish Wonders, also published in 1888, wrote, "The banshee is really a disembodied soul, that of one who in life was strongly attached to the family or who had good reason to hate all its members." Either or both, you know. Sometimes we love them.
Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Oops.
The
Okay, none of them watch this anyway.
The banshee is of the spirits who look with interested eyes on earthly doings and deeply attached to the old families, or, on the contrary, regarding all their members with a hatred beyond that known to mortals, lingers about their dwellings to soften or to aggravate the sorrow of the approaching death. Whoa. So I guess sometimes they are believed to be mischievous. I mean, not mischievous. Just assholes. Like hating. McAnally's definition strips the mythology away from the folklore, a recurring theme as Ireland and Scotland underwent Christianization. Under this folkloric interpretation, banshees are not ancient Irish pagan gods living on as fairies, but the ghosts of dead family members.
Oh, geez.
So that's why it's different. So this legend, I mean, as you could probably tell, it's been spread and changed, and it's like the game of telephone, but
it's
like
not the only thing that's been
thousands
spread
of
about
years.
this legend.
The banshee's legs.
Well, no, she's a virgin, actually. So
only sometimes. Sometimes she's an old crone, and you know that crone got around once in a while.
Yeah, dude.
Throw a bone for the crone.
Hags like to slag.
You know what I mean? The tales sometimes recounted that the woman, though called a fairy, was a ghost, often of a specific murdered woman or a mother who died in childbirth. In Ireland and parts of Scotland, a traditional part of mourning is the keening woman, who wails a lament, and these keening women may in case be professional, and the best keeners would be in high demand. So these keeners would sing songs at funerals in medieval times.
Cry, and people would pay for it.
Yeah.
This is like some Kardashian shit.
Keeners sang sad songs called caunade, the Irish word for crying, at the graveside. There was good business to be made as a keener, apparently, as families would pay very well for a talented one. The best ones always attended the funeral of the biggest and most well-known people and were much sought after, as the more people mourning at a funeral, the greater the person was said to be. For the most powerful families, it was a common belief that a fairy woman would come to keen at the grave. Fairies presumably being more talented singers than any human. The Irish phrase became anglicized to banshee, and over time the stories developed and morphed into what we know today. The fact that keeners were paid in alcohol and often ended up as elderly alcoholic women that were banished from towns and villages also add to the myth. Also, just because they were alcoholics, they're just banished from the village. Like, you gotta go. They had no cars.
Yeah, they didn't have rehab.
They were riding horses and like knocking into things, and they're like, "You gotta go."
No, they were just a menace to society, so they kick them out.
Leave.
Honestly, that's a really good solution.
What could an old woman be doing?
Causing drama.
Oh, she was just a drama stirrer. Who will banshees appear to? Should you be worried about hearing wailing or crying or whatever? Well, according to legend, a banshee will actually only appear to certain families, typically of Irish descent. The banshee's cry is said to be so mournful and piercing that it can be heard from miles away.
It's like a bagpipe.
And it is often described as a warning of impending death, as we said a million times already, but just to reiterate here. For example, in John O'Brien's Irish-English dictionary, the entry for Sith Brog states, hence bean sieg, plural man sieg, she fairies or woman fairies, courteously supposed by the common people to be so affected to certain families that they are heard to sing mournful lamentations about their house by night. Whenever any of the family labors under a sickness, which is to end by death, but no families which are not of an ancient and noble stock are believed to be honored with this fairy privilege. So only the noble Irish families were given this privilege.
Why didn't you tell me you were a Gaelic scholar?
Me?
Yeah, you're so talented in the Irish language.
Oh, oh yeah, I know. Banshee ma single. To get even more specific, it also stated that the Banshee laments only the descendants of the pure Milesian stock of Ireland, which is sometimes clarified as surnames prefixed with O apostrophe and Mac, so MacDonald, McDougall, O'Meara, O'Malley.
MacLeod, McGoldrick.
Yeah.
McDonald's.
McDougall. McDonald's.
McFlurry. McChicken.
Imagine we just... So there are even some accounts that state each family, so each surname, has their own Banshee. Like there's like, this is my Banshee. Like my Banshee told me that your Banshee was an alcoholic.
Now that would be a good TLC show.
Banshees. And according to some, the Banshees only appeared to the 5 oldest Irish families. So not all O apostrophe or Mac apostrophe, just the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Grady's, O'Connors, and Kavanaghs, which is not O.
Sorry, McMuffins.
Yeah. One of our neighbors is an O'Neill. Oh, wait, no. No, it's not.
Who?
I thought Neil's.
We have a neighbor
O'Neill.
named Neil O'Neill. Like Casey.
Neil O'Neill. That's what his wife says at night. Neil O'Neill.
Neil O'Neill.
One account, however, also included the Geraldines. Geraldines or Geraldines? I don't know. Sounds like Grenadine. That's all I care about. As they had apparently become more Irish than the Irish themselves, countering the lore ascribing Banshees exclusively to those of Milesian stock. So I don't know where Geraldines are from, but not Malaysia. I mean, Malesia or whatever that word is. I don't even know. Other exceptions were the Bunworth Banshee, which heralded the death of the Reverend Charles Bunworth, a name of Anglo-Saxon origin, and the Rossmore Banshee, which supposedly heralded the death of a member of the family of Baron Rossmore, whose ancestry was predominantly Scottish and Dutch. So there's some exceptions, or they're just people that are BS artists that are jealous of Irish people and want their own Banshee.
Something to note, Banshees are not in America. So, if you're in America, no Banshees, even if you're...
Well, some people say that, but some people say that they can even travel. Like, if you're a real Irish homie and they really want to warn you, they'll, like, float through the fog across the Atlantic.
Damn.
If you're in America.
The person's probably going to be dead by the time they make it over here.
This is how they walk specifically. What?
Never mind.
Yeah, they have to really predict that one. Okay, so are Banshees witches or demons because they are like this floating supernatural woman that screams? But Banshees are not considered to be demons in Irish folklore, but are seen as supernatural beings or spirits that are associated with specific families. Additionally, despite the fact that witches and Banshees are both associated with supernatural powers and abilities, they are 2 distinct, separate entities. A Banshee is not a form of a witch. Witches in Irish folklore are often depicted as powerful and cunning who possess magical abilities and knowledge and use their powers to help or harm people. So
and
not all witches are bad.
A Banshee can be a bitch, but not a witch.
Bad bitch, not a bad witch. That's right.
That's right.
Represent.
By Testicle.
In some other cultures, the concept of a wailing spirit or supernatural being that foretells death may be associated with demonic or malevolent entities. However, as we said in Irish folklore, Banshees are not considered to be evil or malicious, but rather as mournful spirits that are just connected to the fate of a particular family.
Yeah, I feel like Banshees just get a bad rap.
Would you want to know, like, is that even helpful? Like,
yeah,
it's not...
I think so. Like, what if you hear a Banshee call and you have enough time to get everything in order?
But that's, like, messed up. That's sad. That's, like, depressing for the last, I don't
Honestly,
know.
though, it's kind of a homie move.
I guess it's kind of like, would you want to know when you're going to die or not? It's kind of, like, similar-ish.
Not really. This is like, oh, one of your boys is going to die soon.
Or it's for you.
So
well,
get
I guess
your shit in order.
that's part of the legend. It's like some people believe that it's like you will die if you hear the sound. Some people think that like someone in your family will die, but not you if you hear a Banshee. So, I don't know.
Interesting.
Who knows? If you have ever heard a banshee and someone died, let me know. Or
Please
maybe,
leave a comment.
I guess
in the
they can if
description.
they're the ones that died.
Yeah, right.
Damn it. Okay, well, I
Unless
guess.
you heard a banshee in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, then let us know. We'll pray for you. We'll keep you in our prayers with our Irish beads, rosary.
And my bow tie.
Do Irish people believe in the rosary? I
Yes.
guess they're Catholic. I don't know. Do I look like someone that has rosary beads? We have a paranormal podcast. Other Irish mythology stories relating to the Banshee say that she is the ghost of a young girl that suffered a brutal death, and her spirit remains to warn family members that a violent death is imminent. It is said that this Banshee appears as an old woman with rotten teeth and long fingernails. She wears rags and has blood-red eyes that are so filled with hate that looking directly into them will cause immediate death. This Banshee's mouth is always open as her piercing screams torment the souls of the living. So that's kind of more of an evil take on it. And to get into more of the evil take on banshees, according to some tales, there are evil banshees that derive pleasure from taking a life, and they actively seek out their victims and wail at them to the point where the person commits suicide or goes insane.
Oh, jeez.
But I think these are like, people twisting them to make them scary and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there are even banshees that can tear people to shreds, and these horrific apparitions are what feature in modern day horror films. It is important to note that banshees do not bring death, however, they only warn of it and give the family time to prepare for the inevitable. Examples of other banshee-like creatures in other cultures. We just wanted to talk about this a little bit, give a little shout out to the other cultures around here because don't get jealous.
Yeah, I think it's just not uniquely Irish to have a spirit that warns you, per se. Or like a hot spirit in the woods that's like dangling its tatas out ready.
Singing a song. While banshees are primarily associated with Irish folklore, there are supernatural entities that other cultures believe in, such as the Scottish Benet, or washerwoman, who sounds like those treats.
Beignet.
Or washerwoman, who is also associated with death and is seen washing the blood-stained clothes or armor of those who are about to die. And the Welsh Gwach y Ribin, or Hag of the Mist. What a name.
Sounds like you with the smoke machine.
Hag of the Mist. Additionally, the Scottish Benet is said to appear near bodies of water. Like the banshee, the Gwrach y Ribin is associated with death and is said to appear before a person dies. In Scandinavian folklore, there's a creature called the Nattmara, or nightmare. This entity is said to sit on a person's face while they I'm lying.
It's a hag that sits on someone's face, and that's how you die.
It's said to sit on a person's chest while they sleep and cause nightmares. It is also associated with death and is said to appear before someone dies. It reminds me of sleep paralysis demons, because it's like a demon that sits on, that's above you. But
so it's not a hag that sits on your face.
No, but if that predicted death, I would have been dead a long time ago. In Mexican folklore, there's a creature called the La Lorna, or the Weeping Woman. Like the banshee, La Lorna is associated with death and mourning and is said to cry out for her lost children. They actually had a La Lorna haunted house at Universal Studios when I went alone to the horror nights.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a whole La Lorna themed thing going on, and I was like, La Lorna, bring a corona over. In some Native American cultures, there are creatures called skinwalkers, or Yinaldlushi. These beings are said to have the ability to transform into animals and are also associated with death and malevolence. Also, quick plug for our Native Americans creature podcast we have. We didn't talk about skinwalkers, but we can do a whole thing.
We're going to do a whole thing on skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Skinwalkers are creepy. Those are the types of creatures, like the Wendigo. Mm-hmm. They disguise their voice as like one of your homies or like a hot babe in the woods. Come help me. I'm lost. And you run in the woods after them, and lo and behold, wow.
Now that we went through the different cultures and other types of banshees that aren't banshees, whatever, fake banshees, now let's get into the different family banshees, because as we said before, that there are different ones that represent different squads, different surnames. They became associated with specific families based on the idea that certain families have a special relationship with the fairy world, and that fairies may take an interest in the lives and fortunes of these families, aka fairies or sugar babies.
Fuck yeah. I want to be a fairy sugar baby.
They just want the fortune.
A sugar plum fairy.
Sugar plum fairy. They just want the fortune. In addition to just being born into one of the 5 oldest families in Ireland, another belief is that a family may have an ancestor who was a fairy or who had a close relationship with the fairy world. So this ancestor may have passed down stories, traditions, or magical knowledge that help to maintain the connection between the family and the fairies. I love that for
they're just
those
feeding
families.
A lot of honey.
Yeah. I want to have a relationship with fairies.
We should leave honey out.
We should.
And Uncle Rodney's just going to be out there.
We should do a fairy vlog. We should do fairy vlogs where every day I try to catch or whatever, I don't know. Another belief is, I don't need more evidence on the internet that I'm crazy. Another belief is that a family may have special connection to a particular fairy or group of fairies who may have been seen as protectors or patrons of the family. These fairies may be associated with a particular place, such as fairy fort or fairy tree, or they may be associated with a particular type of activity or way of life, such as farming, fishing, or eating ass. I made that up, but O'Neills are one of the oldest and most prominent in Ireland, and their banshee is known as Bean Chawinte, or the Keening Woman. It sounds like a type of taco. Why is everything about beans around here? Also, do you think any of the Irish crests have like a fairy on it? Probably not. Some accounts suggest that she carries a shroud or death cloth, which she uses to wrap the body of the deceased. So this is the O'Neills.
She's not a babe.
No. The O'Neill family has a long and storied history in Ireland, and their genealogy is traced back to the ancient High Kings of Ireland. According to legend, Bean Chawinte, I'm not saying this right, has been attached to the O'Neill family for centuries, and her appearance is said to be a sign of the family's noble lineage and connection to the supernatural world. The O'Briens are another ancient Irish family, and their banshee is known as the Washerwoman of the Ford. This banshee is said to appear as an old woman, sometimes with a veil or hood covering her face, who is often seen washing bloodstained clothes at the side of a river or ford, similar to, I guess, the Scottish woman. The origin of the name Washerman of the Ford is unclear, but it is believed to be connected to the ancient Celtic practice of washing clothes in rivers or streams as a way of purifying them. In some stories, the washerwoman is also associated with the Morrigan, a goddess of war and death in Irish mythology. The McCarthy family's banshee is known as the Bab or Kaliak. The Badb is said to appear as a hag or a crone, often dressed in rags and carrying a staff or wand. She is also sometimes depicted as a bird or a crow. Interesting, reminds me of the Baba Yaga. Her piercing wail and the sound of her beating wings are said to be heard in the night, signaling the coming of death. The name Badb is derived from the Irish word for fury or battlefield, and the Badb is it's literally Badhbh. What's Badb? DHBH. What noise does that make? The spirit is sometimes associated with war and death. In some stories, she is said to have been a goddess of war in Irish mythology. The Kavanagh family, Ryan Kavanagh, family's banshee is known as Bean Sigd of Clogga.
Another one.
Another bean. Some stories, this fairy is said to be a fairy who is punished for her misdeeds by being forced to wash clothes for eternity. Like we were talking about before, them coming to America. One source showed me that banshees are so devoted to their families that they follow their family members across the world, and her keening can be heard wherever true Irish are settled, because just like them, she never forgets her blood ties. Even though she is unseen, she will attend their funerals, and her wails mingle with those of the mourners.
Here are some famous tales of banshees.
So there are many famous tales of banshee sightings, but for the purpose of time, we'll just be telling a few. One dates back to 1014 AD. This one tells of a banshee attached to the kingly house of O'Brien who haunted the rock of Creglia above Killaloe. Legend has it that Apale the banshee appeared to the aged King Brian Boru before the Battle of Clontarf, which was fought in the same year. Next tale. A recounting from the 18th century concerns a group of children who on an evening walk saw a little old woman sit on a rock beside the road. She began to wail and clap her hands, and the children ran away in fear, only to later discover that the old man who lived in the house behind the rock died at that very moment. Ew.
It's like the clapper for death. And they're dead.
Clap on, clap off.
It's just clap off.
Just clap off. A little girl in the mid-19th century, standing at the window in her house in Cork, saw a figure on the bridge ahead. She heard the banshee's wails and the figure disappeared, but the next morning her grandfather fell as he was walking and hit his head, never to wake up. The same little girl was an old lady by 1900, and one day when she was very ill, her daughter heard wailing round and under her bed. The mother didn't seem to hear, but sure enough, it portended her death. Damn.
That's really scary, like a wailing under your bed. Like you just are laying in bed and someone's crying underneath it. You're like, what the fuck? Like, what type of burglar is this?
That happened to someone I knew, but it was their cat who they thought was neutered or spayed, giving birth to other kittens.
Yo.
Like, she didn't know her cat was pregnant for all of this time. Thought it was spayed because the place that, like, she got it from told her it was. And the other cat that she had. So they were brother and sisters, and they had ancestral children. Kittens.
Oh, my. I mean, were they actually brother and sisters if they thought it was spaded? It reminds me of that horror story. I don't know if you remember, of, like, the girl with the dog under the bed, and she'd stick her fingers under, and the dog would lick her fingers. And then eventually she went to the bathroom because she heard it dripping, and it was her dog, and it was a burglar under her bed licking her fingers.
Ew, stop. So the Banshee always appears as a woman. There is no shortage of legends of Banshee sightings. They stretch back for more than a millennium. The Banshee continues ringing a death knell for the witnessed loved ones to this day. According to the mythology of the Banshee, if she is spotted, she will vanish into a cloud of mist, and this action creates a noise similar to that of a bird flapping its wings. Another legend says that banshees don't cause death, they only serve as a warning of it. A famous example of a banshee encounter in Irish folklore involves the family of the McCarthy clan, who were said to have a banshee named Evil. One day, Cormac was out hunting when he heard a mournful wailing sound in the distance. The sound was so haunting that it sent chills down his spine, and he knew immediately that it was the cry of a banshee. Cormac was familiar with banshees and their significance in Irish folklore, and he realized that the wailing was a warning that someone in his family was about to die. Cormac immediately set out for his castle, riding as fast as he could. When he arrived, he found that his wife had died suddenly and unexpectedly. The banshee's warning had been accurate, and Cormac was devastated by his loss. After his wife's death, Cormac continued to hear the banshees wailing in the distance. The banshee, known as Evil, was said to be the McCarthy family's personal banshee, and she had been present at the birth of every member of the family. It was believed that Evil would wail and mourn whenever a member of the family was about to die, serving as a warning of impending death. Another famous encounter with the banshee is the story of the Fitzgerald family of Kildare, Ireland. According to the legend, the family had a banshee named Moore who would wail and keen whenever a member of the family was about to die. The story goes on that one night, Garrett was awoken by a strange noise outside of his bedroom window. When he looked outside, he saw a woman in a white robe with long, flowing hair who was combing her hair with a silver comb. The woman was a banshee, and her appearance was a sign that someone in Garrett's family was about to die. Garrett knew that the banshees were supernatural beings that were said to be tied to specific families in Ireland. Their wailing was said to be a warning of impending death, and the sight of one was often seen as a bad omen. Garrett was filled with dread as he knew that the banshee's appearance meant that someone in his family was about to die. Within a few days, Garrett's younger brother Ulick fell ill and died. The family's servants reported hearing the banshees wailing and keening outside the castle walls.
Imagine just living in a castle.
We went on Reddit and I found some threads about banshees. One saying, Irish lads of Reddit, how real is the banshee and any stories to share? Someone who deleted it wrote, very real. As a kid, we used to eat banshee bones every Halloween as a ritual. Oh, wait,
Like
what?
candy.
Oh, and then someone else wrote, there's a certain house in Ghislaine. It is Jane Fitzgerald's house, and it is a new one. There are 2 old women living in it. A Banshee was heard near... Oh, wait. Why? Oh, she spelled it like the traditional way. A Banshee.
Beans.
A banshee was heard near the cow house one night. This was about the middle of the summer. They were saying the rosary, and they heard the crying outside. At this time, there was a girl living in the house. Her name was Margaret Teresa. There was a servant in the house also. The people in the house thought it was young children who were crying. They sent the girl out to see who it was, and saw no one. The crying went on all the time, and not a person was seen. It was the banshee. About a month after this, Margaret Teresa got ill and died. Often after that, the crying was heard near the house. Many people heard the crying near the house. My father heard it too. People say that crying is heard when anyone of the Moynihan family is about to die.
Rest in peace,
Rest
Margaret
in peace,
Teresa.
In the r/Ireland forum, someone wrote, in Irish folklore, banshee, fairy woman are harborings of death originally for important families belonging to a class of fairies called Morigna. Banshee are likely related to the screaming goddess of death, the mighty Morrigan. The top comment on this said, I heard the banshee's cry was inspired by a fox's call.
Cue fox call.
Someone wrote, I wouldn't be surprised. I know a guy whose family are supposed to have the banshee curse. Any kind of wailing in the night freaked the shit out of him. There was also something about knocking on the window or back door in the middle of the night. He wrote, not that back door, exclamation point. Knocking on the door, that banshee, knocking on my door. Knocking on my door, banshee. His family lived out in the country, so needless to say, there were times we'd drive out, knick-knack on the window or door, and then hide so we could watch him freak out.
That's cruel.
It is. I wonder if that is how these stories continue through the centuries, just people pure fucking with each other generation after generation. Might be a coincidence. In fact, it definitely was. I once heard a woman screaming the next day my sister was dead.
What?
Jesus.
So overall, do you believe in banshees?
I don't know. I kind of do.
I kind of do
bit.
too, honestly.
I kind of do believe in like
a
something
good
like
spirit,
that.
you know, warning the family members.
Yeah, and I like how like it's specific families have their own banshee, and like they've been tied to families for generations. So I'm not gonna be like, yes, banshees are real, and like I'll fight someone who thinks otherwise. But I like to believe that it is, and I'm not even Irish anymore. anymore. You think that they're evil? I don't.
I don't think
I think
they're
that was
evil.
just someone
I think
that
people are
skewed
just
it.
scared of ghosts, and their eyes are probably red from crying, honestly.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of like pop culture, media, TV shows,
Well, there's
video
a
game,
show
whatever.
called Banshee, but it's about a
It's not-
police.
yeah.
It's about like a town.
It would be cool like if there was a movie about a banshee, but like she predicted deaths. Instead of like being like, oh, your grandpa's gonna die and he dies, like I wish that like she could stop it.
Or like Wolf
Or
of
help.
Wall Street 2, and Banshee is like a stock picker.
I hope you guys have a very happy St. Patrick's Day.
And we're off to go get some shamrock shakes.
We're off to get some shamrock shakes, but thank you guys so much for watching. Per usual, if you liked it, make sure to subscribe, like, comment down below anything related to Banshees or literally anything, maybe shamrock shakes, what if you like them. See you guys next time on Cauldron Convos, baby. Bye!